This is Meet the Author, and I'm your host, Tigner Rand. During the month of March, Rolling Out celebrates women and their majestic powers. We call them sisters with superpowers. We celebrate their achievements of womanhood. There's no doubt that the contribution of women are vital to our success of our communities across the country. But today I'm talking to have the distinct pleasure to speak to a storyteller and a renowned poet, Harold Green III. Known for founding and producing the music collective Flowers, as well as his passionate lyrical delivery, Harold has written a book of poems paying tribute to all Black women by focusing on the visionaries and leadership of our time. The book is entitled Black Roses. Ode celebrated from powerful Black women is a love letter to the unrepresented Black woman that inspired and uplifted him. Black Roses is a collection of odes to a host of noted sisters with superpowers: Ava DuVernay, Janelle Monáe, Kamala Harris, Misty Copeland, Robin Roberts, Roxane Gay, Simone Biles, just to name a few. But what makes these poems so great, they also have this stunning artwork by the phenomenal artist Melissa Colby that accompanies each poem. Without further ado, I'd like to bring to the table my brother, Harold Green III. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, Tigner. I'm wonderful. Good to be here with you.
Yes, sir. Before we get started, this is the cover of the book.
Yes,
Black
sir.
Roses.
It looks good in your hands.
Black Roses. It is currently available on blackbookstore.com. This is Women's Month, so this is a good time to pick it up. And Women's Month leads right into Poetry Month. So It's like the 1-2 punch. So we get this for our sisters, but then it leads right into the phenomenal month of poetry.
Yep.
So before we get too deep into your book, for those who don't know who Harold is, how would you describe Harold Green to that person who don't know who you are, brother?
I think the easiest way, and the first thing that comes to my mind is a poet that can make you like poetry if you ain't ever liked it before. You know, that's one of the things I'm most proud of over my career. People who tend to, stray away from poetry or don't really care about it in that sense, and then hear me and be like, "Man, I ain't like it before you, but now, that type of stuff." It always, because I want to make it accessible. I want to make it exciting. I want to make it available, and I think sometimes we get too stuffy and too academic about poetry, and it closes a lot of doors. And I'm just hoping that my work, opens some more.
I like that. You really did say, because a lot of people do say that about poetry. We get stuck into the old poets of our past. And so in your mind as a poet, what constitutes a great poem?
I think of poetry as journalism for sentiment. So we have journalists who do an amazing job and win all these great awards for being able to capture a moment in time that was important to history. And if you look back, decades from now, you can say, oh my God, I could see this time, I can understand this moment. And I think that poetry, good poetry to me, does that for sentiment. If you never felt that feeling, or if you felt that feeling before, or if you've been there before, or whatever, you could read a poem, a good poem, and it could put you right in that feeling, and that goes for any feeling, whether you, cut yourself with a steak knife in the kitchen, you know what I'm saying, or you've had your heart broken, like from the smallest to the largest. Good poetry, I think, is journalism for sentiment.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. Sentiment, it reflects on time. It reflects on emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
And if poetry is written in the right way, it draws a person in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Poetry is like art.
It
like
is.
A painting. It flows. It ebbs and flows. It has its rhythm, its cadence to it. And if you're listening to it and hearing it the right way, it will pull you in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That current will suck you right on in, man.
So when did you first become interested in writing poetry, creative writing?
I was doing creative writing early on. But my creative writing showed up as like raps and stuff when I was younger. My dad was the first one to write poems for my sister and I, and he used to call us like prince and princess in the poems, and it was real, endearing. But I didn't really know how important or shameful it was when I was at that age. I just was like, oh, this is nice, I appreciate it. But as I got older, and when you get older and wiser, you start looking back on things that shaped you, and start really thinking about, oh my God, the impact that this actually had. And I began to write actual poems my senior year of high school. I got into Def Poetry Jam really heavy on HBO. I really enjoyed the show. And it was the first time that I felt like I was seeing poetry reflective of me. People on the show, I felt like looked and sounded like me and the people that I grew up around, and it made sense to me. And I thought it was hard, and I was like, man, I like this. And this feels very close to rap. This feels very associated with hip hop, and so it just felt very familiar. So I started writing poetry myself. And then I began to use it to bear gifts to people that I love, so my family, my mother, my father, and my sister, I wrote them poems for Christmas. And then my girlfriend at the time, I would, write her poems as gifts and stuff. So I've always tried to use my gift as a gift.
Awesome. That's good. Did you take in school, did you take any creative writing classes or
not in high school? It wasn't until post high school that I actually, got into creative writing classes. All of my introductions to and stuff was within units in my, English courses, so it was always the gatekeepers and always the old heads, the same old guys, so it wasn't until post-secondary that I actually had designated creative writing classes.
Okay. Where'd you go to college? Post-college?
I went to Grambling State University. And then I went to DePaul to finish out my bachelor's, and then I got my master's of humanities and creative writing at Tiffin University in Ohio.
Okay. Walk me through in class. How did your professors, when they started reading your work, did they receive it, or did they try to confine and put you into that tunnel? It should have so many measures and the word should be this, and how the game goes.
I really love that question. Nobody's asked me that one before, and I'm so glad because it used to infuriate me.
What did Erica say? I'm sensitive about my word.
It was so funny, man, because when I was an undergrad at Grambling, it's always different at HBCU. At Grambling, the teachers along with the students would be at my shows, so like they were very familiar. They loved me. In a way that I can't even. It's why I advocate for HBCUs now, because the type of warmth and community that I felt is just unmatched, so that was a very different experience. They knew me as Harold Green the poet. Like, they treated me in a certain way because they thought what I was doing, they felt what I was doing was important to the campus's community at large, but then once I went to PWIs because I left Grambling like my junior year because I was pursuing my career professionally, because by that time I had started like traveling and getting paid to perform and stuff. So I knew this is what I was going to do as my profession. And I couldn't really, and I wanted to go pursue that. But then when I finished at DePaul, I would have these courses, and these teachers, they don't know who I am, man. So they giving me feedback and stuff, and I'm just like, thanks, but we want the, you have to write an iambic pentameter and do these different, what I'm saying. And it was like, okay, cool. And it was even funnier because DePaul was cool, but Tiffin was the place that I thought was really funny to me because I had like a an actual poetry class, and I think I ended up getting a B. And I was just like, okay, all right. I mean, he had so much feedback from me and so many like critiques and so many things, you know, that just he wasn't feeling this. And the crazy part was the class at Hull was so, you know, just amazed, like, oh my
Please,
God, this
yeah.
is, you know what I'm saying? Like, because they just people taking class and I'm doing this professionally. And they like, and the guys just like, no, this is da 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 da. I was like, okay. And I would never say anything, you know, and end up getting a B or whatever. And I'm out here, you know, writing my little heart out. And it was just so funny to me to think about all these confines and all these restrictions and all this critique. And you're dealing with somebody who's doing this in real time, you know, in real life. So, and that's the, you know, that's what I talk about when we talk about how academic and how stuffy we make poetry.
Right. Now, to hear you talk, it did not impact or affect you as the writer, but for that young brother or sister who has not made it to the professional level and to hear that critique, how would you tell them to how to combat that? Because artists hear from both sides of the palette, from the writer,
Yeah.
creative side, and the painter. You'll find that instructor who's telling you, oh, your colors and tones don't look right. This is not how you're supposed to do blah, blah, blah. It, like you just said, how do you tell that student, keep pursuing and don't let that criticism negate your creativity?
What happened for me was I was built up so much in community that by the time I hit, you know, classroom, it didn't affect me, you know. So at home, I was supported, you know, my people, they, you know, just poured into me. Then in the performance arenas, I was poured into, and then my, you know, my classmates and you know, the campus at large, they poured into me. So I felt so empowered. And I, you know, I was told that I was cold in so many different ways that by the time a professor had something to say to me, you know, it rolled off my back like, hey man, you don't know who you talking to. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm good over here. You know, so my advice is always find community, you know, because community is you're not going, that professor is not going to be the one that's going to be the end all tell all of your career. Community is the test of your career. You know, if you can impress community, if you can build community as an artist, then you've done something. You know, that's the true grade, you know, because that's who's going to be with you from decades on out. That one person, you know, sitting behind a desk who you don't know what they failed careers have turned them into, that's not what's going to be the rubric, you know, for what you do as an artist. You have to build that community around you.
Right. Yeah. Very well said. I like that. So how do you draw your inspiration to write?
Honestly, I hate saying this because I know it sounds cliche, but I'm always inspired. You know, like I try to keep my heart and mind open to the world at large. Like I just try to look at every day as an opportunity to find something, you know, and whether I write that day or not, I'm keeping mental notes. And sometimes I'm actually keeping literal notes too, if something, you know, just kind of comes to me. So by the time I start writing, you know, it's just kind of already there. But I'm taking note of like everything is just kind of going on around me and how it's affecting and how it's been affected. And I try to use that because I think that's my job, you know, like literal job, like to make sure that I am taking inventory of the world and the sentiment around me. And how things are bouncing off of me and making me feel, you know. So I keep all of that emotion and energy. So by the time I sit down, I have a fuel tank already full, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a certain writing process you do? Do you need to be in a certain mood or ambiance?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Describe that. How does that go?
Man, I have to, I have, I have to write at night. Like I've had times where I didn't write at night and like I, you know, got off my beaten path or whatever. But like since college, that's been my thing. And I think it's because one, I'm a nocturnal person, but two, especially now that I have a family, I think everybody's brain waves are turned off. Once everybody goes to bed, and all of their brains are turned off and I ain't got to fight everybody else's frequencies, that's when I feel the most productive. And I don't have to get interrupted. I don't have to be worried about, is everybody else okay? And, so I'm relaxed and my mind is, locked in on the mission. So it's absolutely at night. And I have, an office in the crib that I sit at my same desk, all the time, wherever I have called home, I've always had a designated spot where I write at. Like, I'm a creature of habit, so I keep that spot locked in. So now, my office and my little desk is where I'm at.
Playing the music?
You know what? It depends on the project. So
okay.
With the one that's coming out after this one, so this is Black Roses. With Black Oak is the male follow-up. I was really playing John Coltrane's Working From Home, like the whole time, like every single session, like, and I even mentioned it like in the introduction because it was such a part of the process, like sometimes I'll play a certain genre or I'll play a certain, whatever, but like I was really locked in on that for whatever reason. It just matched up really well. But with Black Roses, I think I was just playing jazz. It wasn't anything, it wasn't an album or anything in particular.
Yeah. Any particular jazz genre you like? Are you stuck on anything from traditional bebop, swing, contemporary?
No, not it depends on what I'm feeling at the time. I know at one point I was really into my guy. He's from here. He's a xylophonist, man, but he
talking about Roy?
No.
You talking about old school?
Dude? No. He's young guy. And he had a new album that was man, something from home. Why my mind's so all over the place right now. But that joint I was really loving during Black Roses. And then sometimes I go back old school and get into what I get into, and it just really kind of depends on the mood,
Right. I understand. So let's talk about Black Roses.
Mm-hmm.
What's the story behind the title?
So I have a thing with flowers, obviously.
Yes.
And I have an artist collective called Flowers for the Living, and I've been doing that for like 11 years now, and I'm just really big on making sure that people feel honored and feel seen while they're here. Because we do a grandiose job when people pass of, making a spectacle and all of that great stuff. And I really, over the course of writing these two books, I really kind of meditated on that. And I feel like as humans, we feel safer celebrating people when they're gone because they kind of can't let us down. It's easier to let us down when they're here. Like you get to praising somebody, then the next week they on the front page of Twitter and it's like, oh, here we go. So I like to take that chance, because people are doing amazing things while they're here, man. And if I get it wrong, I get it wrong. But I feel like we need to extend that grace to each other, because I believe, honestly, the more praise we get for the good things we do, the harder it is for us to do bad things. We start thinking like, man, people loving us for this, we got to stay on track. You know what I mean? So I like to put that pressure on people. Like, come on, man, you're doing a wonderful job. Keep it up. So the title came from, I'm always trying to do new projects and new series and stuff like that, and keeping it unique and keeping it fresh. And I wanted to do something with my work to honor Black women that are, making waves right now. And the first person I thought about was Rhapsody, the Grammy winning artist. You know what I'm saying? Because I love her, man. Like, just a great person, a great artist. Absolutely. And I knew it was going to be a video series. So I wrote it, I recorded it, we put it out, and she saw it and she reposted it. And that just got me like turned.
That was
I was
fire.
excited. Yo, man, I was like, oh, that means I got to keep going with this. So my whole thing was I'm going to do 10 of these and then I'm going to do 10 male ones. And I mean, the response I was getting, like I did Ava DuVernay. Ava DuVernay reposted and said she had never, received a gift like this before, and I did Tracey Ellis Ross and Janelle Monáe and Stacey Abrams and, just all these amazing people. And then, one day, Tracey Ellis Ross ends up putting hers up. And, it brought me to tears, man, because it's not about the celebrity, it's about your gift impacting
homage. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The way that you envisioned it, like, wow, I really wanted to touch people's heart and look at it actually working, So it was a real beautiful thing. And that's, that was the birth of the project. And when we were pitching the book, it was just organic to make sure we stayed with the title of the project from, because people were getting, used to it and understanding what it was. So that was the origin.
Okay. And you broke the book down. I like it. You broke it down in sections. Right. Advocates, curators, innovators, luminaries, and trailblazers.
Yes.
And looking at some of the titles, or not the titles, looking at some of the names of the individuals you have in each category, you could have far exceeded these numbers, but I think that you did a great job highlighting some phenomenal sisters.
I'm so glad you brought that up because my original list far exceeded those numbers. I'm so glad I had a good editor, man, because if they would have left it to me, you know what I'm saying?
But see, the beautiful thing about that though, that's where part 2, part 3, part 4 comes in.
Exactly. You speak my language, brother. That was the whole thing. Like because my vision is this is going to be volumes,
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that we continue this work because it's necessary. Because when we were researching the market, there's just nothing out there like this. People don't use their platforms to talk about people who are already here. And especially when you're talking about poetry is already like a dead art type thing, like to speak about things that are dead and, kind of broken, whatever. So people use it kind of organically to speak about dead things, So they don't use, unless you're looking at like kids' books who talk about like history and stuff, and that's about people who are gone too, So there's just nothing like this. And that's the other part that really made us excited. Also, my guy that I was telling you about is Joel Ross. And his album is Joel Ross. And his album is Who Are You? That was one of my go-tos too. I love it. It just because he's from here too, and you could just kind of feel it.
Where are you from? Where are you down?
South Side over in Bronzeville. But I grew up in Inglewood.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check him out. I'll put him on rotation.
Absolutely.
I'm looking, I've read quite a few of the poems here, but the one that really stood out was Tracys Joy.
Yeah.
To Tracey Ellis Ross. Mm-hmm. And Tracey over the years has become a figure that we've all seen. We know her personality. We see her. And just to read your words and what you say, it brings her to life. It amplifies everything about her.
Yeah. Because I think I'll cut you off. Go ahead. What you about to say?
No, that was everything. I just wanted to show to go along with the poetry. We got the artwork that I love how it left. You know who that is without even putting the facial expressions on it.
Yeah, Melissa Colby is amazing, man. We really were intentional about using her because she does that faceless portrait really, really well. And we wanted to make sure that whatever illustrator we had mirrored the work that I was trying to do, because I wanted to talk about these characters, these individuals, but I also wanted you to see yourself you know, in their character, you know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we thought that the faceless portraits did a great job of letting you know who it is. You see that person, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. But you can also see yourself within the illustration because it's faceless, you know. So Melissa did an amazing job with that. But Tracey's piece, I think, is really, I think it really, you know, hits home because for me, I knew Tracey and was a fan since Lyricist Lounge on MTV. And I just thought her like goofy and welcoming, warm personality was just so, I was like, man, this is so refreshing, man. Because she felt like, even before she was on Girlfriend, she felt like somebody that could be your homegirl, you know, that could really be your friend, you know. And I think that's been her thing, you know, all over the years. But what I wanted people to really remember through this piece is that she uses that as a Trojan horse, you know what I mean? Like, she's doing real work, you know, and she's very intentional about the work that she's doing and the things that she attaches herself to, and how strong she stands on her stances, you know. And I think that as well as her welcoming personality is really important, you know, to mention. And I just had so much fun, and it was so much honor in sitting down with each of these people. And I say that, I use that phrase because I mean, that's what I call when I would sit down and research each one of these people. You know, I called it sitting down with them because I felt like I was getting to know them so much more. And, you know, researching these interviews and listening to just listening to their cadences and the way they laughed or the way they talked to people or when they got serious or what they got serious about. So, you know, so all of those things were just so enlightening. And I really enjoyed every second of it.
Yeah. You the America's favorite mom, you did a hell of a job on Felicia Rashad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And what you just said is part of your research, and every one of us who watched her over the years, even now, you see this, but what's the part where it says, have you ever noticed the slight pause Miss Felicia takes after she speaks?
Yeah.
That right there. When I read that, I said, oh, snap, that's real.
Yeah, that's real. Yeah.
Because she does that. She did it in the Cosby's, whatever she plays. It's a pause. And that pause can mean stop and think. You hear what I said? I ain't playing with you, boy.
Man, right. It's a signature move, man. Like, and I don't think anybody does it like her, man. And it was so crazy because I was watching older interviews of her when she was younger and she was still doing it. And I was like, oh, wow, this is just something. And to hear her talk about her mom and her mom being an educator, and how distinguished her dad was, I was like, she just comes from a distinguished household. And this is just a character trait that just was in her, that she couldn't, you know, that wasn't something she trained for. And that was just who she was. And she speaks with such elegance. And when she takes that pause, it really forces you to think like, ooh, something was just said, wasn't it? You know? So I just love that about her.
Yeah. And that just goes to show what you said, sitting down with them and your research, you were able to pick up those small, you know, little integral details that sometimes the average person we tend to overlook. And it's the small things in life about your friends, your brothers, your sisters, co-workers, that it helps you show that, oh, wow, Harold really was paying attention to me.
Exactly. Yeah. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the inspiration piece. Like, I really walk around like this. Like, I really walk around paying attention and really like taking things in that the average person just kind of, you know, lets pass by them or whatever, because all of those little details are important, you know, and all of those little details are inspiring, and they are something that show up in my work. I'm very much about the details.
Yeah. And you mentioned it earlier, you know, how when you wrote the piece for Rhapsody and it kind of evolved from there, but when did you know you really had to write a book? Or was that something on your mind?
That wasn't even the original plan. Like, when I thought the series was going to be the series, but you just never know. That's why, you know, you approach everything with, you know, everything you got, because you never know, you know, what things can blossom into. And when I acquired my literary agent, we were talking about different proposals and different projects I've been working on, what I could, propose as a book idea. And I'm talking about different stuff. And she was like, yeah, but this Black Roses and Black Oak, I think this is. And I was like, let's do it. I hadn't thought about it, but it makes perfect sense to me. And once we, put the proposal together and stuff, I was like, oh yeah, see, this is why you're necessary. You know what I'm saying? So,
okay. All right.
Yeah, it really kind of came into fruition like that.
Okay. If you could thank any Black woman for her contributions, who would that be and why?
Oh man, that's probably. I thank my mama all the time, but like my grandmother, man, because she not here. Her name is Elizabeth, but we called her Big Girl, and it was funny because she was probably the thinnest woman, around, But she just had a big personality, a big presence, and I was really close with her because we lived in a two flat in Eaglewood. So she stayed up top and we stayed down bottom. And so we spent a lot of time together. And I just think that her like hard love and like, she wasn't a sentimental person, but I knew from her actions how much she cared about me, how much she loved me, and I just learned so much about just being selfless and just, just so many things. And I would really love, because she was really a fan of mine. And before she got up out of here, she would sit at the TV because, by that time she knew what I was doing. And she would sit by the TV and just say, I'm just waiting on you to be on TV, So it was just, little things like that. So to be at this point of success in my career, I would really want to be able to tell her,
Yeah. Have you wrote anything for Big Girl?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, and I dedicated the book to her,
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's awesome, man. Mm-hmm. How important is it for readers to have their stories told? In this case, you got this book. How important is it for other young creatives, culture creators out there to get their story told?
I think it's of utmost importance because I think that there's a unique voice, in each, culture creator, and these young voices that are kind of coming out, and having an opportunity to tell their side of the story, and to use their platform to give shine, because I think that's a lot of what has been going on more and more. I see a lot of young people using the opportunity to shine a light on someone, and I think that young culture creators should have more opportunities to, use their platform and get their stories out there.
Yeah. What do you want readers to glean from this book? Your book of great poems, odes to some phenomenal women.
The first thing that I talk about this in the introduction, man, I really want to create some emotional equity for Black women. I think when you have lived in a country for so long, for centuries, that has talked about and acted against you in so many just nefarious ways, I think that it's important to have a moment or continued moments, a continuum of moments uplifting you, and because we talk about the wealth gap a lot in America, but there's an emotional gap, you know what I'm saying? And I think that, we as a people, but it's especially, when I'm talking about Black women, because even worse for them, that they were torn down, but then have to continuously watch what they were torn down about be used for asset, you know what I'm saying? So when you talk about the big butts, or you talk about, the plush lips and all of these different things, these physical traits that are natural to Black women, and then all of a sudden there's so many surgeries and different operations and different things that now people get praised for, or the French braids, or, all of these different things, and you have to sit back and watch what you were torn down be used to uplift others. And that creates such a emotional tear, So I want to use this as inspiration for more of us with platforms and more, and not even just platforms, just connections to other people, to say, hey, I see you, Black woman. I see how amazing you are. I see I see you, and I see you beyond your physical. And I was very intentional about that. Like, none of these poems are about these women's physical traits. These are all about their character, because we don't do that enough when it comes to women. We don't use the word genius enough. We don't use the word leader enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, we are so wrapped in, like, if we, well, I said she was pretty. I said, yeah, okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
cool.
saying? But it's like, she has so much more to all. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
So what
know?
about a mind? What about a
Exactly.
heart?
Exactly. Exactly. And we can learn so much from all of those traits that they have,
Yeah,
you know?
sure. You're absolutely correct. What did you learn? What did you learn about Harold Green when you wrote this?
You're asking all the good questions, Tigna. Man, I learned about my threshold for patience. Because normally I'm in control of my projects, because when you're an independent artist, you get to do things on your timeline, and and when you're working on other people's timelines, it's so different. You're like, it's like, yeah, you get the book deal in 2020 or whatever the case, but then you got to wait till 2022 to see this and that, and you got to wait for this to happen, you got to wait for other people to do that, and it's like your patience. And I got kids, so I got a whole lot of patience, you know what I'm saying? But it's a very different thing when you're waiting and waiting and waiting on something that could be so impactful and so important. And so I really learned about my threshold for patience, man. Like, yeah.
Well, anything, looking where you are right now and how you were from whence you came, what would you tell a younger Harold?
Man, I've thought about that too. Like, I would tell him, all those nights that you sat in there writing, all them nights that you sacrificed, you didn't go to the parties, and you just sat in your room and you listened to music, wrote them poems, and all that sacrifice that you did, keep doing it. Because it's gonna pay off. Because I really had those times where, like, oh my God, I've dedicated all this time and all this energy and all this heart to this. Does anybody hear me? You know what I'm saying? And this really affirmed all of it, and I would let him, man, don't even for a second doubt, just keep going.
Right. Who are some of the people that inspired you? I mean, when you look back, who are some of the poets or lyricists or writers, creative writers that inspired you?
Man, I was really inspired. Like I told you, I was really inspired by HBO Def Poetry Jam, and some of my favorites on there was Black Ice, Amir Suleiman, my girl from New Orleans. Oh, why am I losing track? But then some of my people from here, man, Emerald Green, and
I know Emerald.
and K Love, and Binky and Ugly, and dang, there's so many people that I ran with here that on a day in, day out basis, I would just see them. Red Storm, I would just see them, continuously giving their heart, and it would just make me just like, oh my goodness, and then of course, people like Mos Def and Jay-Z and all of those, that type of stuff, man. And then of course, like so many young Black poets, man, Langston Hughes was a big deal to me. I remember my mom got me the anthology when I was a senior and stuff, and I just was so amazed at how prolific he was. That was one of my biggest things. Like, wow, man! Not only was he, so important, but he just kept writing. He kept writing.
He did.
And I thought that, what I mean? And I just thought that, and then the spaces in which he, ventured off into, and August Wilson, man. August Wilson is, one of my favorite playwrights. And just to think about his poetry background, and because I used to wonder when I would watch the plays and when I would read the actual plays, I was like, man, this has a familiar rhythm to it. And then when I searched more into him and realized that he started out in poetry, I was like, that makes sense. Okay, because the rhythm was just, the cadence was just
cadence to it,
and I was like, okay, I get it, and Gwendolyn Brooks, man, her being from Chicago and just the impact she had. My grandmother like went to high school or something with her. It was some crazy connection they had. Or when I was just like, man, that's just so beautiful. And she was just so chill about it. You know what I mean? Like Gwendolyn never
Oh, by the
seemed
way, that was
like
Gwen.
right. You know, like she never seemed like she was like, man, whatever, I wrote this shit, you know, we be cool, you know.
Yeah, you named some great ones, you know, and I never really thought about it with Langston, because you know Langston from a lot of his books that he's, you know, books that he's written, but he also was a poet, you
Yeah.
know, and
Mhm.
a lot of times either you stay in one genre or the other, but to
Yeah.
be able to write plays and write novels and write poetry
Yeah.
says how creative a mind and genius that the brother was, Langston was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, now and that was, you know, that was always, you know, kind of, that was inspiring to me, because it's like, you know, I don't ever want to get boxed in. I want to be able to do, you know, all
Flow.
kind of
Yeah.
things, you know,
Yeah.
and people just be like, man, he was just a great writer, period. You know, whatever he, you know, really got into.
You see yourself writing a book, novel?
You know what? I've never really been into writing a novel. That every time it would come up, like as far as like when I was choosing courses for my creative writing, I was like, I'm okay, I'm all right, you know. But I do see myself writing, you know, essay collections or,
Okay.
you know, different
Short
things. I mean, I
stories
even
thing.
have, yeah, you know, that type of stuff, because I just, and if it evolved and I end up writing a novel one day, cool. But I know it's not, you know, how on my list. I mean, I have because I even have, you know, children's book deals now, and you know, I'll be putting out a middle grade book, and you know, different picture books, and so it's different, you know, lanes that I'll be in over the next few years that has me excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Little what little something outside of work and writing. What are some of your non-work related hobbies you like to do?
You know, man, I'm a big I've been coaching basketball for the past 14 years or so. So
Okay.
I'm really in the ball, man. My oldest is over at Whitney Young, and you know, so I coach the seventh, eighth grade team over there, and I love, you know, staying in shape, working out, you know, so you know, I'll be on the lakefront trail. I love biking, and you know, just different things, man, hanging out with my family. I love the movies, you know, so I try to, before things got whatever, I would be at the show like probably like every weekend or something, you know. So
Right.
you know, there's just different things. I'm not, you know, I don't have nothing. I wish I had more of a interesting answer.
No, that was a very
But
good answer. Because that was a very good answer. There's no right or wrong answer, but
yeah.
to take time to be able to, you know, to ride a bicycle, because growing up that was the end thing to do.
Oh,
Get on,
absolutely. Yeah,
you
I
know,
loved
like,
it. Yeah.
you know, then to just have a passion, still want to go play, you know, coach ball, you know, and vicariously, you know, live through the kids. But I'm
Yeah.
able to still, no, those are all great things. So it's no,
Yeah,
that's
man. I've had so much success over the years with these kids, man, and just being able to use that as a connector, you know what I'm saying? And just
exactly.
it keeps me, and it keeps me young too, you know. So it's a beautiful thing. And then even over the pandemic, man, I picked up cooking and baking, you know.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, man, like I've really been
What's your
proud
favorite?
of, you know, I I'm not a favorites guy, man. So I just really love trying new things and just
Okay.
like, oh man, I did that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, I was a success at that. Like I was able to make that, you know.
That's good. What's your
Mhm.
favorite guilty pleasure?
Man, I don't know. Um, I don't know. That's a good one. I don't know. I don't think I've ever really thought about it, because I'd just be, you know,
Yeah.
like I guess because I don't, none of my pleasures I feel guilty about. I guess that's why I never really, you know, thought about it. You know what I mean?
Okay. I got you. Uh Favorite vacation spot? Go anywhere you
Man, so far, and I always talk about this with my wife, because I'm not a favorites guy, because I try to stay open to new experiences. But one of my favorite places that because my wife and I, we try to take each other new places, like on our birthdays and stuff. And
I like
she had
that.
to, yeah. One of the places she took me was this place in Utah, because like I said, I like working out, I like staying in shape and stuff. So it was like a wellness resort type of place.
Oh,
and
wow.
we had to, hike, and it was like all these different like water aerobics and workout facility, different things like on the grounds. And it was really cool. Yeah. So that was one of my favorite places that we've gone.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Much love, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. We've been talking to Brother Harold Green, the poet, the author, the writer, creative writer. The latest book, Black Roses, is currently available on blackbookstore.com. This is a great read. It speaks of the old adage that, give people the flowers while they're living. This is a homage to that, an ode to the living. Black Roses, phenomenal sisters during the month of March, which is Sisters with Superpowers Women's Month. Before we check out, anything, last words, or can you share your social media, how people can follow you?
Yeah, it's real easy, man. It's at Harold Green on everything. So no E at the end of green, it's just like the color. So at Harold Green.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking with Harold Green, Black Roses. Continue being creative. Continue letting the creative juices flow. May God continue to bless you with creativity that inspires not only the young, but the old.
Yes, sir.
Let nothing keep you and inhibit you from being your greatness.
Yes, sir.
Until next time, continue being great.
I appreciate that, Tigner. You too, brother.